All right. So the first time I heard about it was post 9/11. I come across Alex Jones, and there is this documentary series. Number one, he made a documentary on the cremation of care inside Bohemian Grove. And during myself watching 9/11, The Road to Tyranny, that was my first experience with Alex Jones. There's a small section in there about Bohemian Grove. Then I came across Secret Rulers of the World. Now, that is a 3-part series with John Ronson, and John Ronson actually helped Alex Jones get into the Bohemian Grove, so it tells that story as well. So that's my introduction to the Bohemian Grove. And now when I see Alex Jones and look, 9/11, The Road to Tyranny is a classic, but it is clearly very Christian driven. The footage, is pretty blurry, especially compared to what we just got with this new infiltration. At the same time, these are your Christian conservatives. These are your Republican leaders, etc. as you dive into it. And they're clearly doing an occultic ritual where they are doing a mock human sacrifice based in burning their conscience. And this new footage really reiterates that. It's clear as day. Since then, now, geez, Mel, 20 plus years ago is when I came across that documentary. I have gotten a hold of their own internal documents, aka their annals. One of their annals is the music base, and you actually get the entire cremation of care. Now, there's a lot of show tunes in there as well. For those that don't know, it's an all-male club. Started in 1872, and then it was a lot of like Bohemian and artist types, Mark Twain, for instance, a part of that. The culture around the San Francisco and the Northern California area. Opportunists, businessmen slowly take this over at the turn of the century.
Okay.
And as they do so, they make it into much more of a political arena, but they also keep a lot of the rituals. Now, there's a certain gentleman in particular, a lot of people are not familiar with, but they refer to him as Uncle George. He is George Bromley, George T. Bromley. And he wrote a book called The Long Ago and the Later On, which is an autobiography. And on the cover of that book is a boat that is shaped like an owl. And the reason it's shaped like an owl is because Bromley is the man that brings the owl, which ends up being their deity, according to their own documentation, to the Grove. So prior to that, yes, were there druidic, occultic types of rituals? Sure. And he was the high priest of the Grove. So he gets brought in, he tells about that process, and he becomes the high priest. And if you go and look it up and you type Bohemian Grove and Buddha statue, for instance, right, you'll see the predecessor to the owl, and it is a large-scale Buddha. Bromley is the high priest in the largest hat, usually somewhere in the middle of the photographs that are available. You get the documents, aka these annals, and they talk about Uncle George, and he is just beloved by all. He is the high priest, etc. And he brings a lot of this stuff over via China, actually, and that's where the boat is from, and Eastern mysticism. So, a lot of people like to talk about Moloch and mock sacrifices, but when you see this network, not only in the occult region, but where it comes into geopolitically, it's really even more fascinating. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you're talking about the occult, you would be remiss not to talk about alchemy. And really, when you talk about Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, now you're fast forwarding from the turn of the century to that World War II era. You're talking about the origin of nuclear power and the nuclear bomb via the Bohemian Grove. Now, the Grove meets for about 2 weeks every single year. But as they gained more and more prominence, they had a club in San Francisco. And it was through the club that they actually got Bromley, and they brought Oppenheimer and others in to start this project. I believe it's the S-71 committee. Anybody can go to Google right now, type it in, Wikipedia. They'll show you all those Bohemian Grove members. So I've been on the outskirts of this club. Obviously, I've not been invited to dinner there, but many years ago when I was doing, I can't imagine why not. I did go to the club, and they've got this, well, first of all, they've got this like circular owl that's kind of like engraved that you would see on brick buildings, and it says, "Weaving spiders come not here." And that's one of their very big themes. In other words, people that come here, don't you dare go against the club. In other words, don't weave your own little agenda. This is our thing. You better be part of the group. And then as you kind of like approach the entrance, they have a large golden owl. Looks to be somewhere, I didn't get right up next to it, but 4 to 6 feet in height. And this is where they might groom you into, bring you into the club. Now, the Manhattan Project, a lot of people have to understand this and why it's so important. Not only are you dealing with nuclear power, when you talk about JPL, the Jet Propulsion's Laboratory, NASA, the origins of these things, you have people that were heavily into the occult there as well. I know that Candace Owens has now woken up to this and done some videos on it. But you look at that past, and for instance, Jack Parsons was heavily into the occult. I mean, over the top, and, died in some odd circumstances. They found some odd things. So, you have to understand at some level, although it's a goof to some of these people, they do believe in higher magic, whatever that may mean, and, not only the nuclear project, Manhattan Project, which is the basis of the modern day military industrial complex.
Right.
This is where they would try out presidents. So, for instance, you would have somebody like Eisenhower, post-World War II, be brought in and vetted before they decided, hey, this is somebody I like Ike, we can get behind in the presidency. Richard Nixon sat across from Ronald Reagan while he, again, was the governor of California, this club located in California, before his presidential run. Nixon on tape, those hidden tapes where he didn't really know he was being recorded, where he talks about going to the Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, is the most effity goddamn thing you could ever imagine.
Right.
And look, it is. I mean, we talk about drag queen story hour and time and the Olympics. Hey, these guys are the original drag queens, bro.
Exactly.
Like, you understand, like, everybody talks about Hoover and his deal. I think he was probably at the Grove in one of these plays. They don't allow women. They do elaborate plays. They dress in drag, among other things. This is, again, a century plus tradition.
Right.
And then you find out, again, some of these guys that act like they're Christian conservatives. It's not just the occult rituals that may be hypocritical in some people's eyes. A lot of these guys are closeted homosexuals.
Right.
They ship in the porn stars, the whole nine, etc. And look, this new footage is fascinating from a ton of different perspectives. One, it's high grade. You can really see faces. So like if you wanted to put names to faces and wanted to do a little investigative, if you had this, you could probably name who the high priest is and some of the acolytes, as they're called. And two, they also mingled with a lot of these people and showed kind of their arrogance, and how they do feel like they're better than everybody else. So that 2-week encampment is now over. I believe it started, they broke in there, they got in there the first week of July. So it's been over for about a week. But I've caught some of the footage, and it's absolutely awesome. And to me, what's really awesome is it's a bunch of young people that just said F it, and one of them, I guess, is facing some legal trouble. And like you said, they're pulling stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But hey, once again, like it's the young people. Listen, when I was young, even today, I'm an old man. We just turned 45 this past week. So when I see 20-something-year-old kids taking the initiative and getting in there and just doing it, I love every second of it. So I love that spirit. Well, who knows how connected they are, but again, it gives you that occultic feel, right? Like, so this isn't a small sundial, everybody. When she's talking about it, this was a thing that was very much in the look and shape of, say, a tarot card. Again, we talked about lesser magic. Right. Again, you really could probably only see the thing being elevated in a helicopter or from a drone. There were certain strategic points, like you said. There were these different gargoyles and statues throughout the property, etc. And that one little infamous temple, if you will, which is supposedly a guest room, etc. Well, why make a guest room into that? Obviously, it's an homage to something a lot of people talk about, sacred Babylonian knowledge, and the idea that it was in that kind of like Egyptian feel. And when you talk about a lot of these things, we are talking about esoteric knowledge. For instance, the plays that you just mentioned. Yes, every single year they do the cremation of care. That's the opener. But throughout the years, they've chosen a ton of different subject matter. You had ones on Faust, which is all about the devil and letting him in, and this open-ended pentagram, if you will. And then you look at Washington, D.C., and you have an open-ended pentagram with, again, the Capitol and the Pentagon right there in the center of this thing. You have the owl also in D.C. represented. Right. It is undeniable at the top of a pyramid. That symbolism. That is not coincidence, folks. So again, whether that's lesser magic or higher magic, who knows? And when I talk about the plays, they would also do plays called Montezuma, and we're talking about a century ago. They're doing these plays. I put it in my film for a reason. Montezuma, for those that don't know, it is a play on Aztec human sacrifice. In the 70s, they did a play called Dig the Devil, with people making deals with the devil. It's a constant motif, because even those that aren't buying into it spiritually, they realize in these circles that they have been corrupted at some level.
Right.
Whether they believe the devil is real or it's, their business competition or somebody here, they've all seen things at that level. And, one of the interesting things I garnered from those kids that got in there, I keep calling them kids, young men and ladies. Well, there's no women in the Grove, but I know they had like a girl on the team in the background. Not sure how she was helping. Is the fact that, they talked to a lot of these guys and they expected, because it was Republicans, that all these people were going to be pro-Trump. And they weren't.
No,
more of them really liked Biden as the establishment guy.
Yeah.
Now, look, again, this is heavy Republican, but, I've got literature that suggests that even people like RFK, not Junior, but RFK, attended the Grove from time to time. And that really does show you the political influence. Yes, largely Republican, like you said, very hard to get into. This is something that when it really got going in the late 1800s, you had about 800 people at the turn of the century. Now there's a little more than 3,000. So it hasn't grown humongous, but at the same time, that influence of a few thousand people, that's very much a part of our Anglo-American establishment and the establishment that is pro-globalist.
Yeah.
So let's start with Garcia. I think Garcia was having mental breakdowns.
Okay.
Like, God knows, I've been on the peripheral of combat sports.
Right.
People get hit in the head all the time.
Yeah.
I listened to the extended part where he made that accusation, and it was just rambling, and it didn't really have a basis. Like, even I remember Andrew Tate, who I'm no fan of, was asking him specifics about it, and he was talking around it and kind of rambling about Alex Jones. Kathy O'Brien, I would encourage people to go check out Transformation of America, especially because this is a book in large part that's ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Right. And there has been acknowledgments that Kathy O'Brien was absolutely involved in some of these programs that the government has only told us the slightest bit about. Right.
Yeah.
Now, she's certainly not the only one that's made these claims and had an air of validity to them. And what do I mean by that? Well, you have the Franklin scandal where Paul Bonacci, who, again, Bonacci is an interesting character. I encourage people not only to read the Franklin cover-up, but the Franklin scandal. There are two different books, one by John DeCamp, who was a state senator and a lawyer who represented Bonacci, a person named Troy Bonner, who is no longer with us, and it's Alicia Owens. Alicia Owens is another survivor who actually did time. He not only implicitly believed these kids, but other people were stunned how accurate the kids were for a number of things and meetings, because they were also being used as drug mules as well as being trafficked. The darkest story that Bonacci goes into allegedly takes place at the Bohemian Grove. Right. And it's one of those things that you're in the middle of a book And there's already been a lot of hard things to read. And, you got to remember, I'm reading this stuff 20 years ago now, right. like a really long time ago. And I remember reading what is alleged to have happened in the Bohemian Grove, and I had to put the book down. I felt physically ill. I felt physically. That was one of those breaking points for me where it was just like, if any of this is true, right. This is something that you should dedicate your life to stopping, right? And in that book, the first one by DeCamp, names are named that have never been named in the public arena. Some people out there that are still billionaires, right. That, again, after what has come to light and the evidence has been proven with people like Ted Heath, right. former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Jimmy Savile, others. Yeah. You have to question. Now, the follow-up by Nick Bryant does not name those names. But what it does do is it does retell that story, which is a very hard one. And what I think he does well is not only does he have an amazing bibliography of the basis for this evidence, whether it be FBI documentation, police reports, local news reports, etc., is he finds and names other victims that give more validity to this story. So, this is, again, one of those things. Do I have any direct evidence that actual sacrifices and child abuse is happening at the Bohemian Grove? I personally do not. But I do have what I would call tangible, direct evidence that's been presented in a public arena, yeah. that people that have suffered a great deal of harm as children have made valid allegations that is indeed the case.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this, Rusty Shackelford, and that was a pseudonym for this gentleman. But the reason he used the pseudonym Rusty Shackelford is that was, Del Gribble from King of the Hill, the quote-unquote conspiracy theorist. Yeah, that was his alias name, was Rusty Shackelford.
Right.
So basically, after Epstein had been arrested and the island had been occupied by members of the United States government, FBI right. mostly is where you see the document or the on the backs of their jackets. He right. got drone footage. This is a guy that was in that area of the island, and all over the island, you can see what appears to be entrances that are embedded into the side of the island. Let me repeat right. that. All over.
Yeah.
It's not one, it's not two, it's not three. I think 4 distinct spots easily.
Yes. Right.
There that you have these. Now, what those contain, that's total speculation. I have no idea. I don't know that we've ever seen anything leaked from inside the rooms at Epstein. I know there's a lot of
right.
stuff,
quote
unquote, on the dark web that's kind of been labeled in that direction.
Right.
But, again, on that island compound, I think we would be remiss if we didn't realize that, yes, there was some kind of underground network. Hell, I'm in a basement. Half my house is underground, right? Like I'm nothing special, everybody.
Right.
On top of that, forget about just the island. What about the New Mexico Ranch?
I know.
Look at that place and what that's built on.
Right.
And if you don't think that has, a network of underground facilities, I would say that you're absolutely insane.
Right.
Talk to the people that actually do the work on these type of panic rooms, et cetera. They sign NDAs. They don't necessarily even know who they're working for.
Right.
Sometimes they're brought in a completely blacked out, van or something like that. They're like, hey, you're going to sit in the back where they don't even want you to know where they are. And you're the one putting these things together. And there's no doubt in my mind that you look at those two places, the island and New Mexico, and there are underground facilities there.
Right.
The vastness of the network, what it was utilized for, I would imagine that's at least where they were conducting the real-time surveillance with somebody probably manning that surveillance as a human being, if not multiple people. Well, I'll say this, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined has a small subsection on not only the Bohemian Grove, but Skull and Bones towards the tail end of that film, because we really wanted to at least explore some of the dark occultic aspects that are really like, you take a deep breath. I can talk all day about the quote unquote New World Order and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Rockefellers and, the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg, etc. But then when you take it to the next level and you see that occultic aspect, and then you also see that they're involved in not only child abuse, but other types of abuses, I think that's a good start. But, not to toot my own horn, but over the past, I don't know, especially 5-6 years of having, I think, 9 out of the 11 annals, if you type Bohemian Grove into my YouTube channel, or into my Rockfin channel, because my Rumble channel hasn't been around long enough, although the Rumble's probably got a couple good ones, you'll see me read from George Bromley's own autobiography. You'll see the cover of that book. I'll break out the High Priest and show you that. I'll show you what they write about via the owl as their deity, like specifying that the owl is absolutely their deity for a couple of reasons, by the way. The owl is very wise, right? It has that moniker to it, but it is also a predator that sees in the night. So, it's also vicious. There are reasons they choose these things. So I've done a couple of videos on those, and I've also broken down some of the other literature. I've even played some of the audio from the one annal that has that. I've shown some of the artwork from the annal that is all based on the artwork. And by the way, when I say annal, and I say 9 out of 11, people have to understand this is, although it's kind of yearbook themed and like phone book sized, it doesn't come out every year. It's like every decade or so. And like one of them is extra thick because it's the centennial edition and it goes over the last 100 years. Look, a lot of this stuff is boring, dense stuff. Another great establishment that's done some good work on this, Truth Stream Media, Aaron and Melissa Dykes, God bless their soul. But when it comes down to it, it is about being a part of the club, being a part of the agenda, keeping your mouth shut, and going within the rules. And if you do that, you get to be part of their society, at least at some level. A funny thing and an anecdote is if you watch that footage, and it might confuse some people, they've got the San Francisco Orchestra for real playing that whole bit. They didn't just take out the part-timers. So those people that are playing that music, that's not a prop. They're the real deal. And, for their service, they get to go to the club in San Francisco. They get limited access for the 2 weeks that it's there. They're like the servant class. And I'll leave with this. The funny thing is that when you read about the majority of the Grove members within their own annals, they admit that in actuality, the vast majority of people that are part of the club are the global middle class. They're not even the top of the tier, and I forget, I think it's in the art one, and they're in kind of the ballroom, but there's kind of that discussion that this body is the middle class of that predator class. Really? They're tough to get, and like right now, you still shell out a few $100s to like $500 for some of them, but the latest one, which has got a new look. So most of these are green or have been and like faded or some kind of forest green or somewhere in this one's like red and black and like leather bound. It's like the latest one. I saw one at one point for under $500 and my jackassery knows no bounds. I didn't have a ton of cash like right at the time. I didn't get it. I haven't seen one for less than $2,500 since then.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, I love everybody. I'm not making the kind of cheddar that I'm shelling out 2,500 beans just yet. Anyone wants to donate one my way, shoot me a DM and I'll give you an address.
Well, okay, everyone go back and watch Jason's former shows on that and just about anything that you want to deep dive into. You can go to any of his channels at YouTube, at Rockfin, or at Rumble and put in any topic because nobody goes in like he does. And he reads all the stuff so you don't have to, which is excellent because then you know where to go. Jason, you're all over the place. Tell everyone where to find you, how to follow you, what you're doing. Let's get everyone that doesn't already subscribe to Rumble over to subscribe to Jason's Rumble right now because we don't know what's going on with YouTube. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm on all the social media. Honestly, if you want to see most of the stuff that I do, at Jason Burmis on X, but like we've talked about, hey, pretty shadow band over there. You want to watch me live? I'm on 5 days a week over at TNT, literally live 2 to 3 Central. We're across the world on that one. And then I'm on Patriot.tv again, 5 days a week. Can't miss me. And I think that's 5 p.m. Eastern. It's either 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Eastern. I don't think you get to get back-to-back Burmis. I think you get a break. So you get an hour of Burmis. You can calm down. You can watch some Larry David, some Curb Your Enthusiasm, throw on some Simpsons, and then go back to Burmis over at Patriot.tv.